and I'm going to talk a little bit about rendering and how the layout is thought to work. And then I would ask you to tell me, or talk back to us about what is good and bad in the rendering engine for the web. But I don't know, is anyone of you using the web, or is this going to be new stuff to you?
Most of you.
Damien, you're not using have you used Turnkey as a web renderer?
I'm just starting to play with it now. I'm very excited about it. Hans has been very helpful in helping me shift my thinking. I've been a WinForms guy for a long time, and so it's definitely a paradigm shift for me. But I'm excited. My general summary, albeit it's naive, is that basically what we're doing with view models is taking the front-end data layer, I would say, and putting it into the model, which is exciting, right? So we don't have expression handles and binding to controls and stuff that's done in the back end now. So I'm still learning, but I'm really excited about it. I do still have a challenge in trying to differentiate between my transient classes that I use a lot versus a view model. And I don't have a full answer there yet. I'm sure we'll ping back and forth on that as I play with it more. But it's exciting, and I'm really excited to get further down the path.
So then this might be a bit of an introduction, at least to you then, to see how we have implemented our client that is rendered by Turnkey. And Linus, have you used this?
Well, I've just tried it out a little. The way we had built applications with MDriven was basically having the model driven server, but just view models as API.
Okay.
Not all the way out to the client.
All right. So I'll try to give you then like an architectural talk a little bit about the architecture of the client and point out some things, and then I'll try to show you rendering and also a bit of how you can shortcut the trial and error part for user interface. So let's see if I can screen share with you and see if I can show something here. So does this show up okay, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now with this group, I just think that maybe I should give you a little intro then to the whole thing. All right. So I'll swap my order here a bit. So we have, if you look at the architecture, we have the MDriven server in the background, right? And the MDriven server then is connected to, if we go from back end to front end, we'll have the Turnkey server there. The Turnkey server reads a model, including the view models from the model, and then it does basically two things. It can do two different rendering things. It can either render for MVC, that is like the classic static page, or it can render for Angular. So what is Angular? JS in our case, because we don't see the use really for Angular, the new version yet, because that's very targeted into doing development of entire programs in the client, not only data binding, and we want data binding. So let's reload this page and stop recording the networking here. Maybe I need to refresh the whole page. I thought we were going to see the top here, but oh yeah, we do. So what we do here when we load this, we load a traditional page, and then we load what we call our Angular app, which is JavaScript really, that then loads all these other things, including then the Angular JS and all these Angular modules. And then we load stuff that is developed by us, which is the streaming app things. And why are they called streaming? They're called streaming because what we do is that we, on the server side, we have the echo space and we have the view models, and then we have all the things that go on to all the data in the view model is filled on the server, and then we filter it and make a queue of updates. So we actually stream the content. It's like a stream of attributes. So an Angular app is mostly made up of, I think of it as two things. You have the part that is always loaded, that is like controlling the whole thing, and then you have what the user sees, the DOM, but also that there's what's called an Angular controller, which is basically the data that is currently on screen. So this streaming app client is a thing that is loaded all the time. Every time a new page is shown, we create a new or reuse an existing controller. And this view data is like a bucket of this tree of data, and we cache that. So we keep it for X number of views. So when you go back and forth between two pages, we actually store that data.
In the
like
client.
On the client. And then the server in this case, it keeps like a cursor that moves down and gets a higher and higher number all the time. And if you reload, if you go back to a page you've been before, either by going forward or going backwards, we reload this view data from before, and then we ask the server, because we store the cursor ID of the last update. So then we get all the data since that point. And this makes it very quick. We can go back and forth and come back to a view and just get the changes from the server really fast. So that is what's going on all the time. We move between view models, and we keep the view model name and the ID of the root object as the thing that we see up here. So this is the events for this root object. So when you navigate, this changes. This is a standard AngularJS implementation. And you could say the only thing we have added is that we render an Angular compatible HTML, which is Angular data binding instructions in it. And then this client talks to the server, loads down the data as a stream of updates, and then we bind together the HTML and this tree of data with this Angular controller. You can see this happening. Well, if we scroll down, this is like the basic things that is loaded, and then you can see this thing. And here we can see this, what's called a server stream. So
I'm recording this, Henrik.
Now I think this needs to be, can this be prettified or is it empty? Let's see if we have other server streams. Here is a server stream. Here, just getting the same thing all the time. Let's reload and see if we get a fresh something that actually has more data in it.
Maybe you need to clear the cache.
Yeah, but this isn't cached. I need wrong view. There's no cache returns in it. So here you can see all the data being sent as attributes like this, including all the actions. So this is an action actually. So this is what is shown. Oh, this page doesn't include it, but this is the actions. So everything is sent as objects like this. Well, attributes that are in this case little objects. And you can say like, wow, but this must be very inefficient. But it's actually not very inefficient because this is very easily compressed. So this is compressed in transit. And then, so you can see this is just a long list. And from time to time, the server, the client asks again, can you give me an update? And then you get this only. It's like, no, nothing to report from the server. If you navigate, you will get all the changes from the last time. So this is what happens all the time. When you click on something, it will send either a data update to the server or an action. And the server will then come back and say, hey, you need to navigate to this place. And then the client navigates. But the whole process is controlled from the server when it comes to navigating and showing data. And the client is like executing commands from the server and then asking for doing things. And this is the reason also that the client can't really, it's no point for the user to send an invalid command to the server. The server only executes what the model allows it to execute. You cannot like fool the server to show a page that is not allowed to be shown or an action not allowed to be executed because the server is in complete control of the whole process. So that is what is going on when it comes to server communication.
So the whole stack of Turnkey has been tested by some clients using external firms trying to find weaknesses to circumvent the architecture with the SQL injection and everything in the book to try to fool the system to trip up. But it has passed every attempt so far. And we think it's foolproof.
Yeah, we think the reason for that is mostly because the interface is so simple. There isn't many things to hack in it, really. Because it's just replaying what the server asks us to do. So this is a calendar for a consulting company that Dennis actually has styled differently. And I just wanted to use this to show how it looks when you look at the code itself. And I have installed this little tool called Resource Override in Chrome. And here you can then tell the system to override pages and each and every file that the client asks for, which is quite neat. It means that if we look here in what was loaded, it comes down here, and then this is a thing to look at. But it's not here. I thought it was going to be there. Or is it because I have overridden it, maybe? Maybe. Let's see. Because this page I have overridden. But the thing is here that we load, that worked. We load the HTML data, the page from the server, and then AngularJS will inject it into the DOM and then data bind it. So if we look at this override component, we can see here exactly, I did this before our meeting. So I've taken this Rockprod Angular page name knappen event ID and said, instead of using what comes from the server, use this instead. And this is one thing that is kind of neat to know how that we do that. We use styles inside this file. So each page that we load can have a different CSS. And we render two parts when we render a page. We render HTML, but we also include CSS inside the HTML. And that makes it possible to change the layout. So the layout is also rendered server-side. And of course you could write your own renderer, or you can override our renderer. But it's, start with ours. It's easier not to invent your own at first. So in this case, we can, for example, go to here, look at this, my calendar in Swedish, and then see that, for example, this is from inside the style tag, you can see here. And then you can see that the font size is specified here. If I turn this on and off, you'll see that it goes in and out in size. So if I want to change this, I can go to the override and I can look here and see that it is here. This is the style information that says that. So if I change that to 12 pixels, save it, Control S, and then reload the page, I've updated my page. So when do we use this? Well, we don't. Our idea is that use the standard interface for most of the things you want to do. Start with the basic built-in. Style with CSS until you have the colors and everything right. Then add a theme, maybe your icons and your things. But then it comes to certain pages, like this one, that are going to be look great in a cell phone. It should look completely different. They want a lot of tweaking into this one. So this is what we call a full page override. This file that we have here is stored in its entirety on the MDriven server. The Turnkey server. So this is in the view override folder. But if you want to do changes to this, you will have to change it, upload the model through the designer, let the Turnkey server reload the model, and then refresh. And that will take you about 30 seconds, which we feel is way too long round trip to see the result of what you're doing. So we have looked at how can you do this, and I'm sure there are many ways to do it. But this I thought was kind of a neat trick, because then you can easily just tweak and change and try, and then when you're done, you can just take this one, Control A, Control C, you have your file, you put it on your Turnkey server, and you're good to go. So this is a way just of shortcutting the whole cycle, how to do it. And also a nice thing is that you don't need to let anyone into the core system. It doesn't require anything either other than that the end user or your developer can see the page. If they can see the page, one page only, they can external from your maybe sensitive data, they can work on this page. But I also thought that this is a nice way to show how it looks. So here we have all the style information, a lot of it. And here then we see the HTML that was rendered. That Dennis has written. This isn't standard, right? So this is what he has created, which is non-standard. But he started out with a standard page. So this is, for example, the data binding of row, because each one of these are rows in the original and event start. So how do you get this right if you want to look at what is sent out? So here you can see this is when I put this separate. This is how this insert looks. And because we don't have Angular now, we can see the original data binding very clearly. So this is the design of this page. And one of these is then injected and data bound and becomes this. You can always take a page URL like this and add a debug. And then you'll see all the data as JSON. This is what the server sends. And this client here is actually using the same stuff. It's the same back end. It's just that we now view the data. So this is, was loaded. And if you change anything in your system on the other page, if this was editable, you would see the changes straight away here. So even the current variables and everything is updated. So this is the data. So this is your lookup if you're looking for what was the name of that attribute. I'll take another example. Here's another page override. This is a public site from Scientific Freedom. And they want also, this is also special styled. And this is the other resource override I've been doing, preparing for this meeting. And here is how this page looks when it's unstyled. And you see search for journals, and then you have the data binding stuff here, and then the styles turn it into this. And if we can also, if you don't want to edit inside this little thing, you can also open this resource override separately. And if we go here to sci-free dev and edit the file, you can see it much better like this. And again here, if we want to go and change something, it said here, search for journals. Let's see if this still reloads. It does. And then search for something maybe. Save. You have changed this into something. Of course, these are silly, simple examples, but it helps. The next thing you might ask yourself, but can't I just, have pieces of what's in the default thing that I started with? Because, other people not using MDriven, they actually write their whole user interfaces on their own. But as soon as you have rendered a user interface once, you never want to go back to doing everything yourself. So what you then can do is that you can, here, I'll show that from this page. So this you need to remember how to type this URL. So let me point to how to get to these pages from the portal. If you have created your site at the portal, like this one, there's a button over here. Should I show how to get here?
Yeah, maybe.
So I started out here without logging in. I logged on. I then looked at my apps. I filtered out Scientific Freedom, and I went to my app here. Then I clicked on Development Info.
So one thing that might be worth pointing out is that the portal, the MDriven portal, it's only meta information about your application. It's not involved in any way running your application. So it's just the registration of the application, and if you choose to upload the publishing profile from Azure, either your own account or you're using our hosted account. If you do that, the portal has the ability to refresh the turnkey installation, so it can deploy new versions. And
an important point to that, Hans, is that it doesn't have a copy of your model. So make a copy of your model, don't delete your entire site, and then say, wow, what happened to my model? So you need actually to keep a copy of your model, or you need to upload it and download it and save it yourselves.
Yeah, and the
and
recommendation...
we have had that maybe it should contain your model, but we haven't gone that far because we also don't want to keep private property that way on our portal.
Yeah, and you should have your model in a repository on your own, and not fully trust the MDriven server that executes your model to be the only place where the model lives, because sooner or later you will do a change that you want to revert, and it's better to have that in Git or Subversion.
So this development info, open this one, and here you can pick any of your view models, and this was called public, isn't it? public journal seeker. So now you will get all the things that are available in this view model, all the variables and all the types and everything. The same thing you actually could view in the debug. But here you also get pre-generated snippets for everything you need to do. This is just a cut apart thing. You know, everything that was generated during rendering is available here to view. So this is like a repository with exactly how you could express your data binding. So for example, the grid is done like this. So you can see, for example, here it binds a visible to this called ng show. It turns on and off visibility. You can see what classes it put out to be able to style it, that this is a data table cell, and that this is the row here. And what is a row? The row is the view model, the current public journal seeker, the search results, and a click here will set vCurrent to true for that row. And the class is then, this expression here says that the class should be VM current row if this row vCurrent is true.
So this is a strict transformation from the definition in the view model that resides within the model, within the documentation of your system. And it's nothing added apart from the knowledge on how to take such a view data tree and render it with AngularJS.
So, but it's a good way to see how we have implemented things. And don't be afraid to use a debugger and look at a site that you have deployed. So for example, the double-click event is call a row, double-click dispatcher on the event, and that will then be calling this client code that I talked about earlier, that will queue a message to the server that will send a double-click event. So here you have all the information you need to copy and paste if you don't grab it from the browser the way I started doing. So any things you want me to say more about? Because I've just taken some parts that I think gives you some foothold on doing more research yourself, because it's so difficult to know what fits your narrative when learning.
So I think one important thing to point out, as well as we talk about HTML, which is a technology that's going to be with us for a very long time, JavaScript as well. Both technologies are super usable, but pretty work intensive. So what we do with the MDriven is that you can take all your structured information from the model and the view models and get this done for you in 90% of the cases. But you will not be satisfied to make a professional system without putting your personal touch to it and make some things stick out from the crowd, so to speak. And that's totally doable with the strategy that we have chosen. You can inject and replace everything of what we normally automatically render, but you don't have to. So that's the choices that you do. And of course, if you replace something that's normally is just rendered, then there's an increased burden of maintenance as you change your model and change your view models. But that's just expected. And then you're back at the same sort of work that's normal for web development if you have replaced everything. So it's all about cutting back on the work and using the knowledge within the model.
And the thing I think you should do, I mean, how do you go from fully standard to doing fully replacement as we have done here? Well, the steps is start fully standard, then add color and style and that, and then you might replace a component. If you look that up in the wiki, you can see how you just replace a part of the view with your own style. And then you will get all the help you need with data, because you will have an attribute actually called data that is like the root of that view model part. So it's very easy for you to access the data, and you don't need to know how it got onto the web browser. It's just there all the time when it's needed. If your component changes the data, everything is taken care of by sending that to the server, handling save buttons, states, cancel, undo, redo, everything. You don't need to mess with that at all. So you can focus entirely on the standard user interface with a component. For example, like this. Let's see if I have it here maybe. No, that's the wrong kind. Where do we have? Don't we have? Or do we have it here? Yeah, here we have an HTML template. So here you have an HTML editor. So this is a component inside this thing here. So I've just, and you can read about this tiny editor and how to do that on the wiki. So if I go, where is our wiki? Let's look up tiny. I think I can search like that, tiny MCE. So this is how you use a tiny MC if you want an HTML editor, all just ready to go. We have made a little tweak to how you do this inserting the Angular component, and you can read here at external components on more instruction on how it works. You don't really need to understand it, but here you can read if you wish to understand how the component is put onto this. So in, where was it? Here, in this case, you see, maybe it's not showing very well, but I think if I edit here now and wait, it will actually, yeah, you can see it here maybe. It turned on this OK button down here. So if I cancel now, and so even though you can see that this tiny editor don't understand anything about save states and MDriven and anything of that, it actually works really nice just to put a component in, and you get all the benefits of the whole turnkey server, save, undo, transaction handling, storage, everything. So that's that. I can also, I had planned to show you a little bit about the thinking behind the layout that we do. And it's quite tricky to do layout on the web. We have left Bootstrap behind because it's so very complicated to get things to be put where you expect them to be. It's very difficult to get a user interface that has straight lines in it that is easy to read. We can still do Bootstrap rendering, but the preferred way to render now is CSS Grid, which is much easier to understand, I would say, and much better to get in what we want. And the most tricky thing to render is scrolling spaces, and that is like tables or grid, if you want to call them that, but tables. So here you can see a few examples that we use in our documents to see how will a table be handled. And there's some like analysis that is done automatically in the view model rendering engine on how to do this. So we have said that if you make a table that is like not touching the bottom, it will be decided how big this is. It will be minimum size, but otherwise it's dictated. The height of this is dictated by these controls, so it fits together. If you put something in the middle but spans the whole way, it will be the same thing. It will have a minimum width, but it won't create a scroll bar out here. But if you put a table that touches the bottom of the view model, then this one is going to expand, and then you will have a scrolling thing that scrolls this part away. So we haven't found, there's so many variants on how people would like it to be, but this is the way we have chosen, and we think it fits most use cases. Of course, you could rewrite the page on your own if you want it differently, or you can just change some of the CSS. You can override the CSS to make it behave differently. And let's see if I have anything else here. And then I don't know if but it's kind of obvious from our user interface. We have a top section, we have a left menu, and we have a view model wrapper. So all your view model will be placed in here. And here we'll have a scroll if needed. If you use view model groups, we will make groups like sections of the view. And in these sections is a completely new CSS grid. So you can do a complete design inside that group. As a tool developer, it's difficult to know exactly what is the right way to go about it. So we prioritize trying to figure out the simplest way we can do it. I mean, like the core bare bones structure. Otherwise, it will just get messy, and you'll end up in a situation where the rendered code is completely impossible to understand. We want you to take the default interface as good enough for 90% of your view models. And then we say, now you have a lot of time left for doing your great UIs for the last 10%. And we will never be able to make it good enough for that single view. It doesn't matter how much we try. There's always something, because you want Google Maps integration, you want some special component. So let's instead prepare for you to get the data easily into the browser, and then you do the special things on the end that you're on your own. Yeah, I think that's it. And then we can mention that what we see coming in the future. Well, we still have some things that don't work in the web browser that we would like to work. We have some navigational things that you can do but don't work. For example, you cannot navigate from within a modal view. If you have a modal popping up, you have to close that, or if you navigate from it, it will open a new tab. And maybe that's what you want, but we would also want to be able to close it and navigate in the main window. That's one of these tweaks that it's kind of tricky to get working. Otherwise, we spend a lot of time on getting the correct date formats, number formats. It will show dates depending on where you are in the world. So all these things are built in, and it's a robust browser implementation. It's been running for a couple of years without any real major problems. It's lightweight. It is still a polling client that it asks every 8 seconds usually for the server. And one of the developments will probably be quite soon that the server will send updates to the client. But I think this is not because it takes too much energy to ask the server. It is more a question of we want second speed update. So if you build a chat a chat window, we want it to be immediate, that things are going on between the windows. It's not really a problem that we poll. And then, of course, you know, in a couple of years, maybe this is all gone technology, and you will have to redo those 10% of your user interface because you know everyone knows that Angular or this Google thing is the worst thing that ever was created, and now everything needs to be done in the super flashy, super turbo thing that comes in 2 years. But at least then we can do a new rendering engine, and you can pick up from having 90% of your user interface already working, and then you can add the last 10% again. And that is our main thing we want to be able to do, to take these user interface things and know that they're going to get old, but we'll make a new one.
Yeah, and following this strategy, absolutely 0% of the business rules and the know-how is stuck in the UI. It's at least in the view model, which is part of the rendering engine. So there's a lot to be future secured, so to speak.
So this is his website. I'm just clicking on to say, so you can make it look whatever you want.
So the client, Scientific Freedom, that owns this product, has sold it to quite a lot of universities to manage. What is it exactly they manage, Lars?
Well, they have one product that manages all the institutions' agreements with the big publishers. So, and this page is for a researcher at Stockholm University. They want to say, well, I have something about space, and I want to find a magazine to publish my space stuff in. And then I want to see the license options that are available and who pays for this. I don't want to, you see here. So there's different paying schemas, and there are different licensing options, and there's different publishing models who can read it for free. And this is, a lot of this is stemming from the European Union soon putting into effect that it will be illegal for government funds to go into something that is behind a paywall. Everything that is funded by public funds needs to be also available freely for everyone in the world to read their research results. So this is what this does. And then there's also more coming in her product, in Sci-Free's product. So this is the main page, and then you log on. Oh. Okay.
So how much is rendered versus how much is custom made from scratch? Of course, she has the CS.
It's now about maybe 150 views, and I think we have 2 special views. Let's see.
So that's pretty good. That's more than 98%.
I should switch here. This is still in development, so let's see if I can become an ordinary user. This is also, specially styled, then, as you can see. So we can go to a author dashboard. So we have been working with this in several ways. Can't do anything. It's under review. One thing is making the changes for everything. So changing the default look and feel. And then when that isn't good enough, we move in. But also, if we want to take the design at the later phase of development, first we focus on that everything works, like the model works and the business logic works and all that, and then you style at the end. Otherwise, it's so easy to start styling in the beginning, and then
then you're stuck
Yeah.
with fixing the styling.
Yeah.
over and over and over and over. Hopeless.
Yeah, and it could be good even if it doesn't look too ready psychologically for the customer.
Yeah.
As I guess we all know.
So if I log on, let's see if I can switch to becoming a university here that is more ready. So they do things like editing search settings. You remember the search page? So here they can edit all these in these tiny editors, and they can override all the icons and upload their own icons and do all these things here. And they seem to be happy with this user interface. It's quite fast, and then they can tweak here, and then they can look at their search page like, no, that wasn't perfect, and then they go back and they put stuff here. Say even they have a look again, it's like, yeah, now it's there. So they can work like that. And then they do a lot of, they manage, I should have picked another institution. I think this is blank. But that they do a lot of, they create agreements, and they create agreements, for example, with Springer Nature, that is well known. And then you have a title, an agreement, URL, descriptions, notes, and then they upload a lot of Excel data and stuff. That's their business case. But so this is one.
The cool thing with being in a HTML rendering executing environment is that part of the data can be made HTML. So data can actually be presented as pages as well. So that opens up for programming the program.
Yeah, and this is nice that you can include HTML, raw HTML, high, and then you can make this bold and big. You save it, and then it's there right away because you just render the raw HTML straight off from the text object in the database. Very flexible.
So it would be a good fit for doing a content management system, more generic. If you were to implement WordPress, the basic WordPress engine in MDriven, it wouldn't be too much. It would be like you have the post and you have the article, and then you have a few things. Of course, the real benefits of WordPress is all the plugins and the plugin infrastructure.
So here is other things just to show how it can look. You see here, this table here was at the bottom, so now the whole page scrolls like this. And here we have you can move to the next page and things like that. So this is how a whole look on, and then you have these ones. They are also supported in the model. So you have a collection called vSelected. So you want to act on those four. You just do vSelected and then for each, or select or collect or whatever you want to do in your model. So these are selecting and working with sets on the user interface, really simple. I can do things like open this in Word, and I just use the built-in functions to take a view model and merge it. With, oh, that was a bad one. Let's look up me. This is, you just take an ODT template that they can do themselves. You take a view model and you say, merge this document with the view model data, and I got this document. And of course, I could server-side turn this into a PDF.
So that's the...
I'm not proud of that picture, by the way.
It's time for an update.
Yeah.
I
So-
got hair on mine, so I won't change it.
Mm,
So here we have a grid that it doesn't touch the bottom, right?
yeah, so here, yeah, exactly. So it's only the last one, I think. This one here is touching the bottom. So if this would be even bigger, it would scroll and scroll and scroll. But otherwise, this is forced to be a little bit scrolling because these ones has to have at least some space.
And the space is controlled by what you design it in the view model.
Yeah. Each row has like a minimum size. Of course, you could override all these settings if you wish, but this is just comes out of the box. Oh yeah, that was the events, news.
And also this is quite special, this system that you show us now, because it's based on a reverse engineered database. So the database was done by someone else, the most part of it. And then we just put MDriven on top and started to explicitly name things better in the model and having the overmapping information within the model. And from that point, once we had redone all the UIs in the old system, we first delivered it as a VPF fat client, and just a few months ago or a half a year ago, we switched to mainly using the turnkey client, web-based.
Yeah, so this is what the consultants see. The reason for the slow pictures is that we should re-render them in low res. They're like 5 megabytes each. But anyway, so this is how it looks to the consultant, and this is what it would look to the administrator. So I guess if we search for this, latest news, search for news. This is the administrative part of it. And then I don't like the layout, but this is the layout of the system they had before this system, the old one. And they didn't want us to move the controls. So, no, don't move publishing. We want it there. Okay. So, I mean, sometimes you just can't.
The customer is always right.
Yeah, you just have to. But so this is the way at least they work, and it's been really fast of building it and delivering something is. I mean, you know how important it is to actually get something out there, even if there's always things that can be improved.
Yeah, and how many views do we have in this model?
It's not that huge. 100 maybe?
No, I think it's more. Go to gist.mdriven.net and log in as you. I think it's more. So this is the service that we showed before, that where you can export model information to see expose all the meta information without actually exposing anything dangerous, just all the names.
Where do I see the...
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe that's not that super easy.
No, it's not that. Yeah, well, I think it's like 100 views that are actively used by, a number of people at least. Then there is all these views that, you have here. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of views. This is all the value stores.
Yeah, and probably if we didn't have a good tool to do this, we would just suffice that, well, you have to change that in a database. You have to send a request to the system admin who should do some SQL to make that happen. But of course, that slows everything down in the production and in the process. It's much better if the high-level admin, the owner of the system, really owns the system and owns the data and have a UI to change it in a controlled fashion.
This is the article and account information for the system. All right. Well, we have gone over time, and so do you have any? I'll stop screen sharing. Anything you would like us to do? Do you have questions, pointers?
We would like you to start using it. It's really cool and fast. And even if you're not ready to go into production and use it that way, it's super great for actually thinking about system and designing systems and what they should need. So it's...
And of course, you can also use auto forms with this. So you can just let the system render user interfaces with auto forms, and then push it to the Turnkey server with upload to cloud. And then you'll have all your classes searchable and linking and doing all the prototyping of your business model without having to do even the basic view models. So that way you'll have a web available prototype running for a customer.
In 5 minutes.
Yeah. That really came to mind, that it looks to be very good for prototyping.
Yeah, learning what are the facts.
Yeah.
What tool is that? For prototyping, what were you saying?
No, to use Turnkey as a prototyping tool. If you're not prepared to use it for production because you might have this gigantic team that you need to keep busy with doing HTML and stuff, you might not be ready to embark on a complete change of process on how you develop. But you as an architect, being able to track all the requirements and the tweaks that the users come in with, just not in as a prose document, but just modeling it and just doing the views that they ask for and showing them the next meeting. That's a real killer app to have.
Yeah, keep two teams together. I mean, if you do the business modeling, architecture, thinking, and you render view models and you have Turnkey to show it, the rudimentary how to work with the data and get data in. Then you can do view models where you click on REST, allow REST. And then those view models, or even the ones we view now, will be available from the REST API. So then if you have a team like an app development team that makes a native app that wants a REST interface, you can work with the data and use to fill in the value stores, to all the basic data, importing, exporting, doing all that stuff using Turnkey.
Yeah.
And then you let them use the REST APIs of Turnkey to do to get to the data and do all that. So you can, it's not one this or nothing. You don't have to choose sides. I would say don't choose sides. Just take the parts that is needed, but giving the ability to just quickly render a working, complete user interface into your data with auto forms, and you tweak the settings for auto forms. I want this to be a picker, I want this to be a searcher, I want this to be with only that, and to set, the relationship between classes and giving a little things into your model, you can get almost a completely working user interface without doing any user interface work. And then when you have that, but you have this other team that does another user interface idea, let them do that. but skip ahead with all the boring.
It's of course much faster if you know the answer to all the questions before you start designing. And how do you know the answers to all the questions? Well, you never know to all the questions, but a lot of the questions are solved just by showing the ones that know that this is what it will look like now. And then they will immediately say, well, we're missing this thing and we need that thing as well.
And the REST interface, you can do neat things like, the REST interface is that you can send a block of data out and they can change it in the native app, and they can just post it back. And Turnkey will resolve it all back into the tables and classes and everything automatically, because that's what ViewModel does. So you don't need to handle all the transaction complexity and stuff. And then you can also but I need to show an error message and stuff. Well, then you do constraints in your model. And then in your view model, you say, list all the errors as text. And then you can send out through your REST interface the constraint validations without having to code anything and without having to keep track of everything. So because you can pick what constraint should be showing up in that view model, and then you pour that out into the REST API. So again, it comes back to this using the power of having every business thing together. But then you can support a team of user interface people that does native apps or other web apps. We have one that has built an app, and he really likes this. What's it called? It's not React, I think. Is it React? One of these frameworks that does cool things, and he's young, and we are old, and he doesn't like old stuff.
Well, it's the widgets.
but anyway, that's fine, because he saw the potential of Turnkey being a backend. So let it be a backend then. All right, that was
super great. Thank you for the presentation, Lars. And hope you can tune in 2 weeks again, and we will show you even newer, cooler stuff. Actually, what we're working on is the real-time APIs within MDriven, to just tag something as real-time and having it pushed immediately. And that would be a cool example to show. That would be a chat application or something done in MDriven.
Yeah.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye.